I'm Brandy Old, and I am a technology development advisor with Alberta Innovates. And I would say my main focus and passion in the world is to help entrepreneurs, especially underserved entrepreneurs, learn how to build companies cheaper and faster. And I do a lot of this work with Craig.
Yeah, and so my name's Craig Elias, and I sometimes describe myself as the other half of the Brandy and Craig Show. I'm also a technology development advisor. And today we're talking around the importance of networking. And we're going to touch on three pieces around this whole piece. So, one, networking in general. Two, we're going to spend some time on LinkedIn and how do you do a good job on LinkedIn. And then the third thing we're going to teach you is how do you find a way to build really good relationships? And we're going to teach you one of our secret words that is called propinquity. And I think one of the best ways to start is maybe to start with a definition of what is networking. So, networking, the definition that I found, which I like, is to build and maintain professional relationships to exchange information, resources, and opportunities for mutual benefit. And the way the description goes on or definition goes on, it says it involves actively connecting with individuals and organizations, both in person and online. And I think online is an awesome opportunity to build a global network, not just a local network, with the goal of expanding one's professional service to achieve career and business goals. And why this is so important is the number one predictor of success. Whether you have career aspirations or entrepreneurship aspirations, is basically the size of your network. So for me, one of the ways that I would share how to be an effective networker is when you meet people, you want to be genuinely curious. What is it that this person might have to actually teach you? What can you learn from this person? And one of the ways we learn is by asking questions. And sometimes one of the mistakes that new networkers make is they only ask what is called first order questions. So I might ask Brandy about her job. And as soon as she tells me about her job, I then go on to the next question. And it's more like an interrogation than actual curiosity. So what I love to do is I love to find a way to ask a second order question. How do I find a way to ask a question about the answer I've been given so I can learn more? And sometimes that question can be as simple as what makes you say that? Brandy, what are some of your favorite tactics?
Yeah, I really like the second order question because it happens so often when you're in a room and you just keep asking things like, "What's your favorite color?" and "How's the weather today?" And here's the thing. We've all been networking, we've all gone through this. People know if you're, a student, they're gonna cut you some slack, but we want to try to help you get into cooler rooms faster, right? So one of the things that I think is really important is how you actually introduce yourself. And just even trying to do it is important. So I used to work at the University of Lethbridge and I hosted a lot of networking events. And I remember the first one I hosted, we had 250 people. Half of them were students, half of them were business people. And the goal was for students and business people to interact so that students could find jobs, all this fun stuff. Well, all the students sat in the back corner at a table together and they didn't interact with any business person for the whole day because they didn't know how to talk to them and they didn't know how to say hi. So, kind of usually what I will recommend people do is look at your LinkedIn and we'll give you some tips on that and think about like a tagline or something that you want to share about yourself. Craig and I, when we do this, we always talk like you have a magic S word in your toolbox that you don't get to use forever, and that's that you're a student. So you can just say, "Hi, I'm so and so. I'm a student at this college and I am taking this degree or university, wherever you're doing." And people then can go, "Oh, that's great. Like, how's the class going?" And they will then be able to ask you questions. So you don't have to worry about coming up with a cue card with a whole bunch of stuff. It's a natural kind of process where you go and you introduce yourself. Sometimes it's awkward. You might feel like you're hovering. Um, Craig, are we going to talk about your favorite thing when you go to talk to speakers at events?
So I think that the whole thing around here is about when you go to an event, you want to have a goal in mind. And uh,
Mhm.
before we get to the goal piece, though, but what I wanted to be able to do, like I had something else I was going to mention. Now I've totally forgotten. So maybe when I tell this story, it'll come up and I'll
Sure.
remember. Oh, but this is what I was going to say. It's like dating. Like you don't
Totally.
interrogate someone on your first date. You'll learn enough to be interested, not being interesting.
Mhm.
What I did was I started with this goal. So I used to go to networking events on a very regular basis. And back then they were mostly only in person. And I remember once I went with a lady named Lori, who at the end of the session suggested I go talk to the speaker. In that case, it was Clyde Beto while he was the CEO of WestJet. I'm like, what am I going to ask that guy? Well, ask him about books. So I'd read a few books, so I went to him and I said, "What book are you reading now?" And he talked to me about the book he was reading now. I don't remember what that book was, but I said, "But then I'm curious." So here's my second order question. My second order question is, "What book have you read that's had the biggest impact on you on a personal and professional level?" And he mentioned a book called Man's Search for Meaning by a guy named Viktor Frankl, which I have since read, and I'm amazed how many times I bring that book up with senior leaders or entrepreneurs, and they're like, that book made the biggest difference.
Yeah, and Craig is like really good at those second order questions, and he will almost always phrase them with, "Well, now you've got me curious," or "What makes you say that?" So even if you just keep those things in your mind so that if you're like, "Oh, I just need to ask that," or "I just need to start with this," it'll help you get started if you're nervous. The other thing, so I mean, we're kind of talking about in-person events, and there's a lot of online stuff going on, and we host a lot of events, and we try to make sure that we help encourage people to network, especially online. So one of the things that Craig and I will do in every session we host online is at the very first 5 minutes, while we're introducing ourselves, because we know we can be boring, we get people to put their information in the comments, their LinkedIn profile that you can click on, and then we tell you to go and connect with 3 people. So that goal thing Craig brought up is really important when you're going to events, whether it's virtual or in person. Have a goal of connecting with 3 people and make it a way to last. So we'll talk a little bit more about LinkedIn, but one of the most important things, or something that you might notice when you're in meetings, especially if there's entrepreneurs, this is one of our biggest pet peeves, is we'll ask people to share their LinkedIn, and then we'll ask a question like, "What's your favorite kind of ice cream?" Or "Who's your best friend?" Or "What's the last place you went on a vacation?" So that people can go, "Oh, I was just in Aruba. This person's going to go to Aruba. Let me tell you where you shouldn't eat." Or whatever those things are to help you make connections. And every time there's at least 3 people that will not answer the question we ask, and they will give us a pitch about their product and try to sell you on their Tupperware or whatever. That is an immediate off in networking. That's like the door-to-door salesperson that shows up and goes, "Would you like to buy a vacuum cleaner today?" And you're like, "I'm eating supper. Go away." So don't be that person. Try to remember that networking is about building relationships. A lot of students that I worked with would go up to someone immediately at events and ask them to be their mentor or ask them for a job. And I think Craig's dating thing is very important. It's like asking you to get married on your first date. Don't do it. I don't know you. Why would I mentor you? So make it worth my time, build that relationship. The best thing to do is just ask someone out for a coffee later, right? Oh, like, "Hey, I had a really good time talking with you at the conference. I went on your LinkedIn. I saw that you have all this crazy work experience. I want to learn how to get into this area. Can I take you for a coffee?" And I don't know, Craig, how many student coffees did you get bought for you when you were at Bow Valley College?
That's a good question. So I'm thinking about when I was doing my executive MBA and I got in this habit of every time there was a speaker that came and talked to my class, I would go and reach out to them to go for coffee. And they would always say, "Well, you're the younger of the two, you're the student, you're probably, I'm just like, you need the money. Let me pay for the coffee instead." So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, folks love to find a way to tell their story, and for the price of a coffee, they'll gladly go out with you. Here's the thing I think though is I taught this once to one of my students. He he came to me and said he wanted to build a network full of entrepreneurs. So I gave him one guy, Jeffrey, who had recently sold a company for $12 million. I think it was 12 or more to Telus way back then. And one of the things I taught him was at the end of that, it's like, "Hey, so I really appreciate this. Who else do you think I can talk to who might be able to give me some guidance?" And he got one, sometimes two more names from each of those meetings. And he spent months just doing these coffee meetings and had this amazing network of these super awesome, well connected, successful entrepreneurs. And he got it because he asked for something. So I think that's one of those other things is when we're students or getting started, don't be afraid to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, and the worst thing that they'll say is no. Or better yet, usually they just don't answer you. So there's no harm, no foul. Yeah, so Craig, I think we wanted to share a couple of our own personal stories related to networking that we thought would be some good demonstrations for folks. So I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, so one of my favorite stories to tell is of a guy named Dory who lives in Vancouver. When I was in Calgary, he actually reached out to me, and actually there were two things. He lived his life on the fringe of the internet. He introduced me to LinkedIn, so I've been on LinkedIn since day 8. I now have bragging rights of being LinkedIn user number 3,956 of over a billion LinkedIn users. And the other thing that Dory did for me is he phoned me up one day and said, "Hey, there's this contest on the internet for billion-dollar business ideas. You've got this idea you should enter." I entered. Dory actually used air miles to fly me down to California. When I got to the next stage of the competition, I ended up winning this billion-dollar idea pitch competition, got $1 million prize, and my life went in a completely different direction. And the last time I went to Vancouver, I managed to have dinner with Dory, and I'm going back in a few months, and I'm gonna do some sailing. I think I might want to reach back out to Dory and get him and his wife to come join me and my wife. So traveling and always finding a way to connect folks. We'll have another story we'll tell later on about connect and travel. That's one of my favorite networking stories to tell.
Love it. Mine isn't necessarily like totally a personal story on that level, but what I like about Craig's piece is he goes back to the places, we'll go back to LinkedIn and think about people that he hasn't talked to in a while and reach out to them. We did this, we just were in Victoria, and there's a guy that gave us some feedback on one of our projects, and we were like, hey, let's message James and see if he's up for dinner. So we went for dinner with James, and while we were sitting there, they got talking about this other guy that I learned was the only person Craig was ever really afraid of. And I was like, oh, I gotta meet this guy. Craig and I have been working together for 10 years, and I don't think Craig is afraid of many people. And I'm like, what? I'm curious. I need to meet this Kip guy. So Craig sends him a picture of us sitting out this place having some lunch and dinner. And Kip's like, oh, I know where that is. I'm gonna hop in my car. I'm not doing anything. I'm gonna come over and have a drink. And it was so fun. We got to connect. Kip shared his story. His son's an entrepreneur. He's looking for help. So there's all these really cool things that came out of the fact that we were just like, hey, we're thinking of you. And to me, that's something I actually even do within my friend group. Someone maybe I haven't talked to in a while or that lives in a different place. And if all of a sudden I'm like somewhere and I'm like, oh, like I'm thinking of my old best friend Keisha that I grew up with. Now I text her instead of just letting that thought pass by. And you'd be amazed at the number of collisions you can make around that. But what I wanted to share with you all that I thought was really important was that I remember hearing the term in school, like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I was very adamantly like, I don't like that. I want to make sure that I deserve a job, that I get the job that I deserve because I should be there for what I know and what I do. And then I thought back to all the ways that I got all of my jobs, and every single job that I have had was because of a network connection. So my very first job at the university, my friend had it and she was moving to BC and she said, Brandy, I absolutely hate this job, but I think you'd be really good at it. So I went in and I applied. And part of the reason why I got in, and we'll talk about propinquity, is because I went to school to be a teacher and I was applying for a marketing role. But the person that was the director had a master's of education and was also a teacher. So he hired me because he knew that I would think like him. So there's all these different things about how people can get you into rooms to help you prove that you deserve to be there. So it's kind of like your resume. Your resume does the job of getting you an interview, and your network gets you the job of making sure your resume gets recognized. So keep that in mind as you're going through this process. Talk to people, go and ask those questions, learn about the jobs, learn about the extracurriculars, whatever you want to do. Ask questions of people that work in there so that you can learn, is this job even a good fit for me? So we talked a lot about LinkedIn, Craig. And I know you mentioned that you were really early on. My claim to fame with LinkedIn is that I got on LinkedIn when I was 19, and that was because I was looking for, actually, I was 17, I think. And it was because I was looking for, Craig's like, yeah, I was 17. Because I was looking for scholarships. So there was different universities and all these things, and a really cool opportunity that came out of that for me. I actually had something in the letter come to me from the University of Rome asking me to come study there for a year as an international student because I posted my grades. I posted all the extracurriculars I was in, and they're like, oh, this person's a really cool student. Let's see if she wants to come study in Rome for a year. All because I posted stuff on LinkedIn. So you never know who's going to find your profile and what they're going to do. So if you're not sure what LinkedIn is or you haven't heard of it yet, make sure that you go on. I think that's the number one action item Craig and I have for you. If you do not have a LinkedIn, please go and make one. This is a social networking website app. You can download it on your phone. You create a profile. You can put your volunteer history, your work history, and this is where you can keep connected with folks. It's very much so social media. People can make posts. You can share stuff. Craig and I host events. We share when we're doing events on there to our network so people can see what we're up to, and all of these pieces. Why do you want to be on LinkedIn, Craig?
Because then when people look you up on Google, they can find you instead of the murderer in Pittsburgh, which is what used to happen to me at some point. And luckily enough, now the murderer in Pittsburgh, I think, shows up on page 6. So, yes, LinkedIn and all kinds of other ways. But yeah, how do you make sure that you get found, not the murderer in Pittsburgh, the stripper in Chicago, or the porn star in Miami? That's one of the big reasons.
Yes. So my name is Brandy Old, and so I have to fight against Brandy Old Fashioned recipes, and I am not as popular as Brandy Old Fashioned in many different ways. So LinkedIn is the way that I was able to boost my visuals online when people search for me. So you can do a search for yourself on Google and see what comes up because it's fun sometimes. So, how do you have a decent LinkedIn? Well, it's really important to have a strong profile, and you don't necessarily have to have huge write-ups or anything like that, but make sure you take the time and please don't use artificial intelligence to write it. People can tell for the most part, and we work in technology, so I think technology people are a lot more aware of AI in a lot of ways. But try to be genuine. Your LinkedIn is your profile, it's your voice. So take some time, make sure that you're crafting it and talking from your perspective. And you want to be able to share some content. So if you're the kind of person that doesn't like to make your own stuff, if you're not actively, involved in volunteering and that kind of sort of thing, and you're like, oh, I don't want to be on social media more, the easiest way to do this is comment or engage on other people's stuff. So if there's someone you want to connect with that you haven't connected with yet, you can see their feed. They might have just posted something really cool. Comment on it. Ask a question. It's a really good way to start to connect with folks with the free version of LinkedIn so you don't have to pay to send them a message to request to connect with them.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
30,000 connections, and I still use the free version of LinkedIn.
Totally. Yeah, because LinkedIn Plus is actually pretty expensive in my opinion, but it does have its own benefits for those who use it. So the other thing too is with connection requests, when you're sending them, you can send 5 free ones with notes. So Craig and I are a big fan of taking the time to say, hi, I'm Brandy. I ran into you at the summit that we both attended in Toronto. I didn't get a chance to see you. I'd love to be able to follow up with you over a virtual coffee, and I fire that away. And I will reserve those 5 for when I go to events or if there's someone that's really important to me that I want to make a connection with in my network. If it's someone that I already know that is already, they'll recognize me, I'll just send them the free connection request without a note because we're friends. And my favorite thing about this is that you never know how long you've been connected to someone. So I went to school to be a teacher. I now coach entrepreneurs full time. I took a hard left turn. And there are some people that show up. Actually, Craig, I can't even remember. It was one of your students that worked for you as a co-op. She came across somewhere when I was talking to my friend Jess. And I was like, well, let me go see if I'm connected to her on LinkedIn. So I searched up her name on LinkedIn, and sure enough, we were connected. And I'm looking at her profile and I'm like, how the heck do I know this person? So I go through her work history and I see, oh, she was an intern for the entrepreneur in residence at Bow Valley College. And that was Craig's job. And I went, oh, that's how I know her. She worked for Craig. So there's all of these different ways that you can remember people and that you can find out how long you've been connected for, because you never know when you bump into them. And it might be like in Craig's instance with Dory 20 years later that you're like, oh my gosh, let's have a coffee. We did that when I went to New Zealand. So I was on a trip in New Zealand in April and I was trying to find a way to get into some incubators there because Craig and I like to do sessions and meet people internationally. So Craig's like, let's go through my LinkedIn and see who I know. And who'd you find, Craig?
Elena, I think, was the first one, and we had like a 25, 30-minute phone call. She then made introductions to other people, which led to the introduction that Brandy actually then got to do. And then Brandy, like yesterday, didn't they reach out
Yeah,
and say, hey, right? And that's just a million miles away. It's a, what is it, 14-hour time zone difference,
yeah,
or flight.
big time. So
And
super cool.
so one of the things that so Brandon and I ran this thing called Founder Fridays, and we had this author we were trying to get to. Her name was Heather. So we said let's just reach out to her on LinkedIn. And we got ghosted. So we're like, oh, let's go find someone we're connected to. And it turns out we found someone in Silicon Valley who we were connected to. And we went to her and said, hey, can you just put in a good word for us and let Heather know we're real? So then Heather finally replied to us. Next thing you know, she speaks on Founder Fridays, ends up speaking at Adventures coming to Calgary, and then even did a special session for us for a college up in Northern Ontario. But we've got not a whole lot of time left, Brandy. We want to try and figure out this whole thing like relationships. How do I build
Yeah.
better relationships? What's that P word we used?
Keyword, propinquity, totally. So Craig actually taught me this word, propinquity, which we kind of bastardized to say become the emotional favorite, right? So the actual definition of propinquity means to feel a nearness to someone, whether it's physical or psychological. And in today's world, in the digital space, we want to try to create psychological nearness where people can see you and they can relate to you. And the reason we do this is people make decisions based on emotions and they want to know who they want to do business with or who they want to ask before they decide what they want to ask and all of those pieces. So propinquity is a really good way to start to build some intimacy within your network so that people go, oh, I like this person. I'm going to call them to see if they can help me out with these things. Because remember, networking is about that mutual benefit that Craig had mentioned, right? So you might be asking for a coffee for career advice, and when this person comes back to you for an ask for something, you want to try to make sure that you can kind of have these connection reasons so that they have a reason to come back to you. So how do we create propinquity, Craig?
Yeah, so for me, it's about sharing little pieces about yourself. So for me, you will see on LinkedIn not just how great I think I am because I've got all my career stuff, but all the volunteer work that I do and finding things that you actually have in common, finding those pieces. So whether it's hiking, biking, dogs, something there becomes this piece, and then content becomes sometimes the piece that you can use. So bumping, like when you find something you think is relevant to somebody, share it. I use the message platform inside LinkedIn on a regular basis. Saw this, thought of you, saw this, thought of you. This is a process called bumping. So every now and again, you reconnect with people maybe you haven't spent time with in the past, and it brings them back to the forefront. And it's amazing how, there's things people think of and they haven't got to it, and all of a sudden they see this message on LinkedIn and they're like, oh, plus what I find by using the messaging app on LinkedIn is that people can find you easier because they've got a ton of connections. Like, oh, who was that guy who always wears the same shirt as that lady? Oh, hang on a second. That was Brandy. This is Craig. And they find a way to connect the dots. It's so much fun when that happens.
Totally. And I think what Craig is sharing is really important because you might have a really awesome connection at a conference with a speaker, and then they're like, let's have a coffee. You need to follow up because they're not going to remember what they said to you because they've probably talked to 50 other people. And it's not because they don't care. I think that's a big thing. When I first started networking, people would say, oh, I'll follow up. And then no one would follow up. And I'd get really sad. And I was like, oh my gosh, people were just being nice to me. That's not the case. We just have busy lives and there's these things that get in the way. So don't be afraid to bump some content to be like, oh yeah, because they might forget your name. They might forget the school you go to. And then they're like, ah, I told this person that I'd have a coffee with them. I don't remember who it was. And now they're sitting there and they don't know what to do. So try to keep that flow running in that sense. The other thing, I guess one of the stories that I'll share with you is not really one of my stories, but it's one of my favorite stories to tell about propinquity. So I have an entrepreneur that I work with, and they were building a technology company, and they weren't raising money yet with investors. And they had one of the coolest ways to build relationships with investors. So when startups are looking for money, they go to these VCs or angel investors, and they ask them to put money into their company for shares. And these guys weren't doing it yet, but they thought maybe they would. And there's a few local people in Calgary that they knew were investors. So they reached out to them and they said, hey, you like to mountain bike? I like to mountain bike. Let's go mountain biking. And they started a monthly or weekly mountain bike group with 3 or 4 investors before they were investing, and they just became friends. So they had 3 mentors that they could ask questions about at any time, all because they reached out over a shared hobby and interest. So these types of things create propinquity and nearness and help you establish a really cool relationship with some people in your network. And you can actually go out and do stuff you like. It's not always about business. It's about the people you connect with.
So maybe a quick summary, Brandy, for some of those folks that maybe, we talked a lot about like which stuff's
Mhm.
most important. So I think, first of all, have a target. When you go to a networking event, have a target in mind. Meet three new people, meet the speaker. When you meet people, make sure you follow up in 24 hours or less, because when you're new, it's likely they're going to forget, they're going to forget who you are. If people don't ask questions about who you are and what you do, you're not allowed to tell them, because if you're telling, then you're selling. And then the other thing for me is always have something in a back pocket. So when someone says, "Hey, how can I be helpful?" You've got something they can then all of a sudden find a way to help you with.
Totally. And as part of that, don't ask for immediate repayment. If someone asks for something, don't turn around and be like, ah, well, I scratched your back, so now it's your turn to scratch mine, right? It's all about that mutual respect and building in some common roads. Try to find things that you have in common. So if there's speakers at events that you want to meet, go to their LinkedIn, see what their volunteering is, and be like, oh my gosh, I also volunteer at the Humane Society. How long have you been doing that? And now they're like, oh, I'm going to remember you. You're the person that volunteers. The other thing that I really like to do is finding a way to maintain regular content. So don't make this a formal structured thing. Don't make it too big and pressured. Do the stuff that Craig and I have shared. Do the bumping. Share the text message with the person when you think of them. Small, easy things so that you can stay in touch with people. And then my last thing for you is at the end of an exchange. Always ask the question Craig just said. How can I be helpful, or how can I be an extra set of eyes or ears for you? So then you're putting out that offer to help them and find a way to reconnect with them later so that they have a reason to give you an ask. And with that, I think you're armed with like what, 30 years of networking experience in 30 minutes?
There we go. An hour, a year and a minute. There we go. Good luck, everybody.
Perfect.
We'll see you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, have fun.